Begin today the Gemara on Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom of the Amud. We're continuing the discussion. What do we learn out from the pasuk Mishras that it says regarding a Nazir? Rabbi Akiva says you learn out that when you have bread with wine and you soak the bread in wine, you can be mitzaref the heter to the iser. We combine a half a kazayas of the wine, a half a kazayas of the bread, and together it counts as a full kazayas for the iser, for the Nazir. So now based on this, the Gemara has a question here. So in a Braise it says the following drasha. It says by a Nazir, whatever that comes from the grapevine, it will be also for the Nazir. What does this teach me, this pasuk? Limid al isure Nazir shehem mitztarfen ze im ze. This extra pasuk is coming to teach me that the various different isurim of a Nazir combine one with another. Right, which means you have, let's say, wine with grapes, or different types of grapes, or you have the seeds, or you have the grape skins. The different isurim of the Nazir, they're mitzarev one to another to make up the full amount of a kazayis. So now the question is, according to Rabbi Akiva, why do you need such a drasha? Now Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, hashte yeshloima. Now you can say, according to him, you learned out according to him, that heter mitzaref liser, that even when you have a half a kazayis of bread, which is mutter, and that combines to a half a kazayis, which is aser. So iser le iser mibaya. Needless, do I need to say that when you have one iser and another iser that they combine with each other? For sure they should combine with each other. Right over there, Amalei. So it seems to be an extra drasha. Amalei. So Rav Ashi answered, heter le iser, when Rabbi Akiva said that when you have a heter and an iser that combine together, that's only bevasachas. If you ate the heter and the iser mamish together. Right, so I mentioned this there's a machlokes between Rishonim what the bevasachas over here means. Either bevasachas means in the literal sense that you ate it at the same time, even if the bread and the wine are separate, but you ate it in the same time. Other Rishonim say it has to be a taruvis, a mixture. The bread is the wine is absorbed in the bread. Only then is the heter going to be mitzaref to the iser. But iser le iser, when we learn from this pasuk here that the various different isurim of eating from the wine or the grapes for the nazir are combined with one another, that's afilu b'zeh chazeh. That's even if you eat it one after the other, not only if it's eaten bevasachas, right? But it has to be b'chdei achilas pras. If you remember, we had before within that time frame of how long it takes to eat a half a loaf of bread, which is as long as it takes to eat 3 eggs or 4 eggs within a couple of minutes. But it doesn't have to be bevasachas. It can be b'zeh chazeh. That's the chiddush over here, and therefore this is a drasha that works even according to Rabbi Akiva. Fragt the Gemara, Rab Shimon, the less late siruf. Rab Shimon holds that there's no such a concept that applies here by a Nazir that you would have to combine one Isser with another Isser to make up the amount of a Kazayas. Why not? So we had this earlier in the Masechta. Rab Shimon's opinion is that you don't need the amount of a Kazayas to be Chayiv Malkus. According to Rab Shimon, the whole concept of a Kazayas is only when it comes to a carbon, but not regarding Malkus. Right, so this pasuk here is talking about Malkus, so there's no inyan of Tziruf B'chlal that applies here. So what does he learn from this pasuk? So Mikol Sheyaseh, this extra pasuk of Mikol Sheyaseh, my darishpe. What is he darshan of this pasuk? Amalach, Rab Shimon will tell you, Hahu mi bayale, that pasuk I learn out from it, according to Rab Shimon's opinion, that la'olam ein a nazir achiyazim mekulam. We learned earlier in the Masechta, Rab Shimon says, what happens if a person accepts upon himself naziris, but he says, I'm only going to be a nazir not to eat the grape seeds or the grape skins. He spells out when he accepts it that he's only accepting not one detail. So Rab Shimon says he won't become a nazir. If he's already spelling out that only this, so then he's going to have to spell out that he's going to be a nazir from everything. If he says Stam, I'll be a nazir, I'll become a nazir. So that's why it says in the pasuk Mikol Asher Yaseh, that if you're spelling out one detail, you won't be a nazir. It has to be Mikol Asher Yaseh, everything that comes out of the grapevine, that only then will you become a nazir. So it's a different drasha. It's regarding the acceptance of the naziris.
And if a mandama holds you could become a nazir even only partially?
No, you can't become a nazir partially, but the other mandama holds that even if you said that you're only going to be a nazir, let's say from the grape seeds, you automatically become a full nazir. You don't have to spell out the whole thing. Sagt the Gemara, Omer Abavo, Omer Abelazar. Abavo said in the name of Rabbi Lazar. Now this is very similar to what we learned before. Before it was also Rabavo. Rabavo said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that Rabbi Yochanan said that according to Rabbi Akiva, the heter is mitzaref le'iser. Right, the half a kazayis of bread and the half a kazayas of wine. Now Rabbi Val quotes in the name of Rabbi Lazar very similar, and he says as follows: Kol reviyah sheb'teira. Anytime you have the amount of reviyas in Teira, this is a reviyas, is the reviyas of a lug when it comes to drinking liquids, and when you have a reviyas in Teira of a iser, ein heter mitztaref le'iser. The heter will not combine to the iser, to this amount of reviyas. Chutz mireviyas shebenazir. Besides, by the iser of a nazir of drinking wine, so over here the reviyas will combine to a heter. If you have a half a reviyas of heter and a half a reviyas of iser, it will combine. And here he learns out the same drasha like we said before. Shaharei omra Torah mishras. Because when the Torah says mishras, that means that you soak the bread in a half a reviyas of wine, and together it's mitzvah to the full amount. So the Gemara asks, "My ikke ben Rabbi Yechanan le Rabbi Lazar." What's the difference between this statement that Rabbi Vo himself quoted the name of Rabbi Yechanan before, and here he's quoting it in the name of Rabbi Lazar? Says the Gemara, ikke benayu. The difference is that Rabbi Yechanan marbi afilo eichlen. Rabbi Yechanan said that this halacha that you could combine a heter to the iser, that applies even by foods. If you have a half a kazayas of grapes and a half a kazayas of bread, you can be mitzvah of both of them. Rabbi Lazar mashkin in midyachrin alay. Rabbi Lazar says this chiddush that you could combine the heter to the iser only applies regarding liquids. Mishras is mashma that it's only talking about liquids that a half a reviyas of wine together with a heter, that will be mitzdaref. But regarding foods, it's not mitzdaref. That's the chiluk. Okay, this is besides another obvious difference, which the Gemara doesn't point out because this is just totally in the machlokes of the Mishnah, that Rabbi Kiva was following the opinion that the shear of the iser is a kazayas. And Rabbi Lazar is following the opinion of the Mishnah that the shear is a revius. Okay, but the main difference that we're going to focus is on Rabbi Yechanan says this even regarding foods, solids, and Rabbi Lazar says that it's only regarding liquids. Now, the Gemara brought up revius. The Gemara is going to bring an interesting discussion in Nigeya to the halachas of revius that you find in many different places in the Torah. So, Amar Rabbi Lazar said, Esa revi'iyos hein. You have 10 different places in the Torah where you find the shear of revius. Now, v'noket Rav Kahana biyade. Rav Kahana said this, and he held it in his hands, meaning he wanted to have a sign to remember this. So he said, Chamesh sumkese, 5 of these halachas of revius are regarding red liquids, and v'chamesh chivarta, and 5 of them are regarding clear or white liquids. Chamesh sumkese, so what are the 5 that are red liquids? So first the Gemara tells you what they are, and then the Gemara will explain each one. Nazir, Vaisa Pesach, Shehoiru, Bamikdash, Umeisu. Those are the 5. Now, what are these 5 things that are, and they're all regarding red liquids. So Nazir, the halacha of a Nazir, that the amount is a revius yayin. The isser of a Nazir is that he's not allowed to drink a revius of wine. So this is a red liquid, the wine. And this is following not Rabbi Kiva's opinion that says that the shear is a kazayas, even regarding liquids, but this follows the other opinion of the Mishnah that says, like Rabbi Lazar just said before, that the shear is a revius. The second halacha was Oisa Pesach, a revius regarding a carbon Pesach. What is this regarding? Amar Rav Yudah Mashmuel, Arba Kaises, Halalu, the Dalet Kaises, the 4 cups of wine that you have to drink by the night of the Seder. Tzarech Sheyeh Ben Kedei Revius. Each one of the Dalet Kaises has to be the amount of a revius. Okay, which is, I think, this the amount that we go by today is 2.9 ounces. That's a shir of Reb Chaim Na, a revius.
What's the word kedei?
Where do you see the word kedei? Second. Kedei revius, to the amount of revius. Kedei many times means in order to, like a reason for, but here it doesn't mean that. Kedei revius means the amount of a revius. Now, shahayru, what's the next place where revius applies? Shahayru means shasa revius yayin, a person that drinks a revius of wine, a dayan, a rav, al yoyre. He's not allowed to paskin a din. That's the shahayru. He's paskining a din. Mikdash, the 4th case, is in the base of Mikdash. What does this mean? Shasa revius yayin. You drink a revius of wine, v'nichnas la Mikdash, and afterwards you enter into the base of Mikdash. Chayev misa. That's the pasuk it says there in Pasha Shmini that al yavi b'chol you're not allowed to come into the base of Mikdash after you drink a revius of wine. Umeisu, what's the halacha of meisu? When you have 2 people that passed away, this is the halacha of tumah. The Tanya we learned in Abraisa Minayin. From where do I know? The revius dam. You have the amount of revius of blood. So this is also we're talking about red liquids. Sheyoytze mishnei mesim. So you have a revius of blood from these 2 people that died, and so there's a half a revius from one person, a half a revius of another person. Together you have the revius of dam from two mason. Shehi metame boil. That so this, if it's in a tent, you're under a roof, this will make you tummy. Shenema, the pasuk says, "Val kol nafshois meis lo yavai." So it says nafshois. It uses the plural term of nafshois. And so that from that we learn out that even if it's the minimum amount to be metamayu is a revius of dam from a mace, and even though here it comes from two different mason, it's metama. That's the last halacha in Nigeya 2, the 5 different red liquids that there's a halacha of revius. Now Rav Kahana said v'chomish chavarta. There are 5 cases where a revius applies to white liquids or clear liquids or. What are they? Chalas, Nazir, Mitzayre, Shenifselu, B'Shabbos. Those are the 5 halachas. The Gemara explains them. Chalas means revius shemen l'chala. It refers to the revius of oil that's needed for the challah that's used by carbon taida. Carbon taida has to bring breads along with his carbon, and the amount of oil that's used over there in the carbon is a revius of oil. Nazir also is a revius shemen l'nazir. The carbon of a nazir also you have to bring along breads with the carbon, as we'll learn later in the Masechta. So there's also a revius of oil that has to be used for the breads, for the nazir. Mitzayre also needs a revius. What is this? The revius mayim le mitzayre. By the mitzayre, when you bring the carbon, so the halacha there is, as the pasuk says, you have to shecht a bird, and you shecht the bird over a cup of water, and the blood of the bird goes into the water. So over there it has to be a revius of water. Shenifselu, what's the halacha shenifselu? The Tanan, there's a mission that says, V'shar kol mashkin tmeyin. The word shar is really sort of extra here, but all different kinds of mashkin, liquids that a person drinks that are tamei, poislin is it will make the person's body tamei. But revius, if he drinks a revius of tamei water, it'll make his body tamei that he will not be allowed to drink truma. So that's only if it's a revius. So that's the 4th halacha of revius. Or where are we holding here? The 4th or the 3rd? The 3rd halacha of revius. No, this is the 4th halacha. Okay, b'Shabbos. What's the halacha of Shabbos that we say that there's a revius? The Tanan, the Mishnah says in Shabbos, it speaks about the various different amounts of different liquids. What's the minimum amount to be chayiv if you carry it out into the Rishus HaRabim? So the Mishnah there says, V'shar kol mashkin, all other mashkin which were not spelled out there before in the Mishnah, b'revius. The amount to carrying them out and to be chayiv on Shabbos is a revius. And v'chol ha-shoivchin, that's how the Bachas Gaira said, all other wastewaters, b'revius. The amount also for carrying them out on Shabbos to be chayiv is a revius. That's the final case where you see there's a halacha of revius. Okay, so in total we have 10 different halachas here. Now this the Gemara asks, v'su leke, there's no other cases where the amount of revius regarding liquid applies. But there is the halacha of washing your hands, netilas yadayim. And the Mishnah says, "Mirivius, you can take 1 revius of water and noitlin liyadayim leechad vafil l'shnayim." So this time in the Mishnah there says you can use 1 revius of water and 1 person can wash himself from it, and you can use that revius even for 2 people to wash from this 1 revius. So the Gemara says, reason why we don't mention that amount of revius here is because beplukta loikamayri. The Gemara doesn't want to bring a case where there's a machlekes. Because over there, there's a machlekes. The other Tana there in the Mishnah says that if it's a revius, only 1 person can wash his hands from this, not 2. Not 2 people. Okay, so therefore, it doesn't want to bring up a case of a machlekes.
So you can wash with 2 hands.
Yeah, you can wash 2 hands, but you can't wash for 2 people. And the Tana Kama there in that Mishnah says that you can wash even for 2 people. For that Gemara, there's another case where the revius applies. For ha'ikeh, there's a case regarding a saita. What happens by a saita? You have to take a keli and you have water in it, and you put the Megillah of saita that they write, the psukim of the parsha of the saita, and they erase it inside this water. How much do you have to have? There's a ha'ikeh, the Mishnah there says, so you may be paili shel cheres. So the Kayin brought a vessel, an earthenware vessel, v'noisen l'teicha, and you placed the Megillah of the saita inside of it. Or sorry, no. The taitche here is v'noisen l'teicha chatzi log mayim, and you fill it with a half a log of water minakir from the kir in the Beis Hamikdash. But Rabbi Yehuda says revius that has to be filled with a revius. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, we have another case where the amount is a revius. So again, it's a quarter of a log. So again, the Gemara says beplukta loikamayri. Doesn't bring this case because it's a machlokes here. If it has to be a half a revius, or not a half a revius, again a half a log or a quarter of a log. The 3rd case the Gemara asks, but there's still another halacha. This is regarding davening. When a person davens and you have something that's unclean in front of you, you're not allowed to daven. So what happens if you have a bucket in front of you that's unclean? You have a bucket of urine in front of you, and you want to daven in that room. You have nowhere else to daven. So what do? So the mission there says, "Kama mayim noitzin l'toicha." How much water do you have to put inside to dilute it in order to be allowed to daven? Kol shehu. Just a drop of water. That's enough. Rab Zakkai says, revius. You have to pour inside the revius of water. And you may think that there should be a difference how much there is inside the bucket in order to dilute it. It should make a difference. But the Emma says it doesn't make a difference because this whole halacha in this case that you're not allowed to daven in front of it is only a isim d'Rabbanan. If it's a situation where there's a bad odor, so then it could be a isim atayra. But it's talking about a situation where there is no bad odor and there's only a isim d'Rabbanan. So therefore, Rabbanan said, according to the Tanakama, as long as you put a mashu of water in it, you can daven there. And Rab Zakkai says it has to be a revius. So you have another case where the amount of a revius applies. So again, the Gemara says, "Beplukte loikamayri." We don't bring up this case because this is a machlekes. The last case the Gemara asks, "V'ha'ike mikveh." There's the halacha of a mikveh. Even though we know that a mikveh has to be 40 saw in order for it to be a kosher mikveh, but the halacha was that a mikveh that you're using for toiveling very small vessels in it, if you have just the amount of a revius of water, that's enough to be a kosher mikveh. So regarding a mikveh, the amount of revius is also applied. Answers the Gemara, no, that we can't count. Bar ma'ahi, take that out because the batlu Rabbanan. Rabbanan will mevatl this idea that a mikveh that's an amount of a revius is a kosher mikveh. The minimum amount for a mikveh has to be 40 saw, even if you're just toiveling tiny little pins and needles, because Chacham didn't want you to confuse it with another situation where you might use this amount for a mikveh. The mikveh always has to be the minimum amount of 40 saw. Okay, so we have all these cases regarding the halacha of revius. And the Gemara goes back to the actual machlokes that we were speaking about, that it says in the Mishnah. So in the Mishnah it said that the shear of the Isser for a Nazir is the amount of a kazayis. Whether you're eating grapes or whether you're drinking wine, the amount is a kazayis. And the Tanakama of the Mishnah said that what's the amount? The amount is a revius. Okay, so there's two ways how to learn this Gemara here. So first we'll learn according to the way that I explained this in the Mishnah, that the Tanakama of the Mishnah holds that the shear of a Nazir is always a revius. Whether you're drinking wine, whether you're eating something, a grape, it's always a revius. So according to that, the Gerus in the Gemara over here is, Tanakama, take out the word loy, midam Elohim l'chol isuri Nazir l'shtiyah. Tanakama says we have to compare all isurim by a nazir, whether eating, whether drinking. All of the isurim have to be compared to the halacha of drinking. Just like we always find in the Torah that the isur of drinking is what amount? A revius. Over here as well, all of the isurim that it says by a nazir is a revius. So the Shainim over here bring that it's really a gzera shava. We learn out, or a comparison. We learn out. It says over here yayin v'sheichar. And it says by the isur of not drinking when you go into the Beis HaMikdash, which we just mentioned before, that over there the amount is a revius. Over there it also says sheichar, and the amount is a revius. So over here regarding a nazir as well, the amount is a revius. And this goes on all the details that it mentions here in the pasuk, even regarding eating. But Rabbi Akiva that says that when it comes to a nazir, the shear is always a kazayis. Even when you drink, the shear is also kazayis. Kivin d'chsiv, because the pasuk says ve'anovim lachem v'yeveshim lo yoichal, that you shouldn't eat moist or dry grapes. Ma'achile kazayis. So just like we know the shear is always for eating, the shear is always a kazayis. Avkal isuran kazayis. Everything else that it says there in the pasuk regarding a nazir is a kazayis. So the Rishonim say that how do we know that this goes on everything else that it says in the pasuk? Because before this it says in the pasuk yayin v'chaimetz, and then afterwards it says this va'anovim. It says it with a vav. Va'anovim. So it's connecting to before. And therefore from this we learn out that the shear is always a kazayis. Okay, this is the pshat of the Rosh and the one pshat in Taisus in the Gemara. But there's another. Yes, according to Rabbi Akiva, even when you drink wine, the shear is a kazayis. There's another pshat though in the Gemara, according to the Girsa that's written here in the Gemara, loy medam l'chol isuri nazir, that the Tanakama actually holds that, the shear for nazir is like you find in Kol HaTorah Kula. If it's eating, the shear is a kazayis, and if it's drinking, then the shear is a revius. And that's what he says here. We're not going to go and compare all the isuri of Nazir to drinking, to say that the isur is always a revius. No, we're going to say that it's just like in all of Torah, that if it's eating, it's a gazais, and if it's drinking, it's going to be a revius. That's the pshat of Rabbeinu Tam and Taisvis. Rabbi Akiva's opinion remains the same. Rabbi Akiva, like we said before, he holds that no matter what it is, eating or drinking, the shear is always a kazayas. Okay. Dr. Gemara weiter, the next thing it said in the Mishnah, v'chayiv ala yayim b'fnei atzmi chulo. So the Mishnah said that you chayiv, if you drank the wine for itself, so you chayiv for the wine, you chayiv for each one, you chayiv separately for its share. For eating that thing separately. Let's see, the Gemara explains this. Tana Rabbanon, so we learned in Abraisa, when it says in the Pasuk, Banovim lachem b'yeveshim lo yoichal, that you shouldn't eat grapes, whether it's moist or it's dry. What do I learn from this? L'chayiv al zeh b'fnei atzmai, v'al zeh b'fnei atzmai. What it means to say is that if you're going to eat moist and dry grapes, you're going to be chayiv actually twice. You'll be chayiv for eating the moist grapes one time malchus and another time for eating the dry ones. That's the chiddush over here. When it says in our Mishnah, that's what the Mishnah really meant. Chayiv al yayim b'fnei atzmai means that it's not only that all of these things are osir, but if the Nazir eats all of these different things that Torah says, wine, old wine, grapes, moist grapes, dry grapes, he'll be chayiv for each one separately. Now, and from this that the Torah spelled out, the moist grapes and the dry grapes regarding the Nazir separately, so I learn out from this, l'chol isurin sheb'Torah, so I learn out regarding all the other isurim that are mentioned here in the Torah regarding the Nazir. This isn't referring to all other isurim in the Torah b'chlal. It's referring to all the other isurim that are mentioned here in the Torah regarding the Nazir, that makan, just like here regarding the grapes, shehu min echad. It's the same grapes, but v'hein shnei shemus. But nevertheless, the Torah spells it out as two different names: moist and dry grapes. V'chayev al zeh b'fnei atzmai v'al zeh b'fnei atzmai. So it's chayev for each one separately. Av kol shehu min echad. So too all the other things that it says, even though it's all the same min, but v'hein shnei shemus. It's two different names in the Torah of the Isser. Chayav al zeh b'fnei atzmai v'al zeh b'fnei atzmai. You're going to be chayav for each one separately. What does that come to add? La suyei chamra chadati v'invi. This comes to say that a person drinks wine, he drinks new wine, and he eats grapes, so he's going to be chayav for the wine separately, and he's going to be chayav for the grapes separately. Even though the wine came just from these grapes, he has grapes here and he squeezed out some wine, then he has some of the grapes and some of the wine, he's going to be chayav for each one separately. Amar Abaye said another chiddush regarding the Isser of a Nazir. Ochal chartzon. If the Nazir ate chartzon. Okay, so we had the two opinions before what chartzon is. But let's say chartzon means the seeds. So he ate the seeds of the grapes. Like geshtayim, he gets malchus twice. Why did he get malchus twice? Because besides the Isser of the Torah that it says bechartzanim, that you shouldn't eat the seeds, it also says the pasuk that we quoted before, mikol asher ya'aseh megefen. Anything that the grapevine produces. So you're really being over two isurim, two lavim. The lav of eating these seeds, and the general lav of not eating anything that comes out of the grapevine. This comes from the grapevine. On chalzag, if he eats the grape skins, like geshtayim, so he's also going to get twice malchus for the same reason. Ochal chartzon vizog, so if you eat the grape seeds and the grape skins, so like shalish, you get 3 times malchus. The Torah is spelled out separately: the grape seeds, the grape skins, and then the general lav of nikola sheyasa, that you're eating something that comes out of the grapevine. Rava says, no, it doesn't work that way. If you eat the grape seed, so you get 1 malchus. Or you eat the grape skins, you get 1 malchus. Rava doesn't hold that this general malchus that you learn from the kol asher ya'aseh, that because it comes out of the grapevine is another malchus. And why not? You don't get malchus if the Torah repeats the lav again, but it uses it in a more inclusive term after it says all the details. The Torah says mikol asher ya'aseh, so that mikol asher ya'aseh is called a lav shebechlolos, a lav that includes a lot of details in it. There's no separate malchus for that. Mosav Rav Papa asked on Abaye. Braisa says, a Nazir is drinking wine the entire day. So even though he drank a lot of wine, he only gets 1 malchus for all the wine he drank. Now, but what's if Amru Loi, if while he was drinking wine, he was being told, and he was being warned, al tishte, do not drink. And v'hu shaisa, and he drinks another revius, So because he was warned every time separately, so then chayav kolachas v'achas, he'll be chayav for every revius, or maybe kazayis, according to Rabbi Akiva, of the wine that he drank. Now, ochal, here he's going to bring you how many times Malchus, this Nazir could be chayiv, if there's different things that he ate from what comes out of the grapevines. Ochal anovim lachim v'yeveshim. He ate the moist grapes and the dry grapes, so that's already 2 isurim. Then he ate chartzanim. He ate the seeds of the grape. That's 3. V'zogim, and he ate the skins. That's 4. And then v'sochat eshkol shel anovim. Then he took some grapes and he squeezed out the grapes v'shosa, and he drank wine from this. So that's 5. Like a chamesh, so he gets 5 times malchus. That's what the Brisa says. But the question now on Abaye is, but if what Abaye says it's true that there's now a general malchus for the pasuk that says mikola sheyasa, because you're drinking or you're eating from what comes out of the grapevine, little kishesh, you should get 6 times malchus. There's 1 more. So achas, 1 more al mikola sheyasa, like Abaye said, this mikola sheyasa is an additional malchus. The Gemara answers on this, Tana v'shir. The Tana over here teaches you the amounts of malchus that this Nazir can get, but he left over 1. He didn't say the full list. He left over this 1. But the Gemara asks on this, my shire, the high shire, the rule always is the Tana doesn't leave out 1. If he leaves out, he has to be a minimum of 2 that he leaves out, because otherwise he would have just said that 1. So what else is the Tana leaving out that you're saying that there's an incomplete list here? Says the Gemara, there's another malchus he would have to get. Shir la yachal devarai. He gets malchus also for not keeping his word. Every neder, including naziris, that a person takes upon himself and he doesn't keep it, you get malchus for that as well. So the Tana didn't say this malchus. So the Gemara says, no, that you can't say. Imishum hai lav shiyurahu. If you're saying that that's what the Tana left out, that's not considered to be something that the Tana left out, because kikatani, the Tana here is counting the amounts of malchus midi duloi isei beduchta achriti. He's counting you the amount of malchus that don't apply in another place, that don't apply to a regular neder. He's telling you what are the amounts of malchus that you can get by the nazirus. That's a general malchus that for any neder. So that's not considered to be that the Tana left out. So the Gemara says a different shot. I'll tell you what else it left out. There's another kind of thing that grows on the grapevine that he didn't mention, and that is v'hashayir de beina binayim. The Gemara mentioned before, there's a beina binayim, which means, according to one shot at least, this is these little grapes that sometimes grow between the big grapes. You have big grapes that the sun reaches them, and they're nice big grapes, and then you have these little grapes, and that's a separate isser. And the Gemara before said, you learn it out from this that the pasuk says, michartzanim ve'ad zog. That word ve'ad is an extra word, and that goes on these little grapes that you chayav for that separately. So and that he left out. Okay, so what does it come out of here? So the Tana left out 2 different things, and therefore this is not a question on Abaye. Okay, but now the Gemara actually reverses this whole thing, because now this actually comes out to be a question on Rava. What does Rava hold? Rava holds that the general lav of Mikola Sheya Asa and Mikola Gefen, that's not a lav b'chlal. So then according to Rava, it would come out that the Tana only left out 1 thing. It only left out this case of Beina Binayim, of these little grapes. Why would the Tana leave out this 1 case? We have a rule. A Tana never leaves out just 1 thing. So really it's a question on Rava's opinion now. So now, Ella, again?
Before I said
The what? No. The Tana never leaves out 1 thing.
So who'll do it is that?
If the Tana will leave out, it's only if it's 2 cases, 2 malchus, and that's according to Abaye, the Tana left out 2 things. He left out the malchus of Mikola Sheyasa, and he left out the malchus of these little grapes. But according to Rava, there is no general malchus here. So why did he leave out this 1 malchus? So Elam Rav Papa says, Leitanye midi chamesh. The truth is, in this Braise, it doesn't clearly say this number, B'chlal. It doesn't say the number that you get only 5 malchus in. It just says you're going to get malchus for all these things that are listed in the Braise that you ate. But the number 5, it doesn't say in the Braise. So therefore, it's not a question, not on Abaye and not on Rava. The Tana is not coming to give a number. So it's not a question, B'chlal. So the Gemara asks, very strange, V'ha'oisvei chamesh. Rav Papa himself brought this Braise. He asked it as a question on Abaye, and his whole question was because he asked that the Braise does say that you only get 5 times. And he was asking on Abaye that you should get 6 times Malchus. So, ume'achad le'tanya chamesh. If in the Braise it never said that you only get 5 times Malchus, to my time oisvei. Why did Rav Papa ask this question? So the Gemara says a very interesting thing. Amar Rav Papa, so Rav Papa says, Anosavri, I thought lav gemari hibiyade, that when Abaye said his opinion that you get another time malchus for the lav of Mikola Sheya Ase, I thought that he didn't have this as a tradition in his hands from his teachers. It was his own chiddush that he said himself. And therefore I thought, that I thought if I'll quote him a braise and I'll tell him that in a braise it says that you only get 5 times and not a 6th time, I thought that he'll have charate. Meaning, what Rav Papa did was, it never said in the braise the word chamish. He made it up. And he quoted this to Abaye. And he thought that when Abaye will hear that it says in a beferish braise chamish, he's going to retract from his opinion. Now, but what I didn't know is the Gemara Hibi Yodei, that when Abaye said his opinion, he had this as a tradition from his teacher, and therefore even after he heard this braise, he didn't have charata. And then Rav Papa came and said the truth. There's really no such a braise. The braise doesn't say 5 b'chlal. So he was just sort of testing out Abaye to see if he had this tradition from his teachers or not. Okay, let's just finish to the Mishnah. So there was the argument in the Mishnah in the taich of chartzanim and zog. Does chartzanim mean grape seeds and zog means the grape skins, or is it the reverse? Chartzanim is the grape skins and zog is the grape seeds. So the Gemara brings Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said, Keman mitargeminon. According to who does it say in the Targum that mipurtsonin va'ad istzurin, that chartzanim va'ad zog is translated as purtsonin and itzurin. So purtsonin means the grape seeds and itzurin means the grape skins. Rabbi Yossi, that's going according to Rabbi Yossi in the Mishnah, which said this pshat, that the chartzanim is the grape seeds and the zogim is the grape skins.